All right, all right, all right. Well, it has been wow, it's been like a week since we've been able to do the podcast, and yeah, it's been one of those things, guys, where I'm sorry I've been away, been trying to get back online to hang out with everybody and do this. I know it's something that I enjoy greatly, at least twice a week, so hopefully everyone else does as well. Tonight we're just gonna kind of hang out and see what we can get into. We got a few people on the call with us tonight, just hanging out with us, chit chatting. We had the newsletter come out last week. We had some great reveals for the classes Rogue, Ranger, Monk, and we've had a few other things with Kilson where he showed up to a few different website openings for guilds, or even on the VOT show, just talking in general about Pantheon development and everything that's going on lately. So exciting times. But with all that being said, I wanted to kind of just sit down and chit chat and see what all's going on tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and just start opening it up tonight with the class reveals. I want to talk a little bit about them. I want to give my opinions on them. And I know that I haven't had time due to other circumstances lately to go into great detail, looking into much of it. So I'm just going to kind of look into it tonight and learn as we go. So, if anyone has any opinions to share, feel free in Twitch chat. If anyone has anything on Pantheon Radio they'd like to share, please feel free as well. But again, thank you all for tuning in on Pantheon Radio, and thanks everyone for on Twitch for hanging out with us tonight. We'll go through some how to find me, how to connect with me later on in the show, but for now, I just want to kind of get into the conversation. So let me go ahead and open it up for the guys to jump in. All right, guys. So as always, to do a little introduction, get everybody accustomed to the fact that we have other people on the call with us. And right now we have Death Penguin Day and Track on the call with us. Guys, don't feel obligated to say anything during the call, but as we go through the conversation, if you have any input or any opinions on anything, feel free to let us know. Be more than happy to, just hear what you got to say. So on that, class reveals. Last week, I wasn't able to do the show on Wednesday. Had some things going on. Actually, we moved it to Thursday. That's what it was. We moved the show to Thursday due to the newsletter being delayed today. And I was looking forward to talking about the newsletter on that Thursday night. Had some things come up real life, wasn't able to do it. And then Friday night, we had a huge night with MMORPG and Brad and Joppa talking. And then Kilson was on VOT. It was just, there was a lot going on. So we went ahead, we removed that show as well, just so we wouldn't have any interference there. With all of that being said, I did want to kind of go over my opinions on some of the class reveals and some of the things that I saw and heard about. So I wanted to start with the Rogue. I don't know if y'all had a lot of time to look into these, but the Rogue myself. So I didn't really find anything too outrageous with it. It seemed pretty straightforward, pretty standard, I guess you could say. There was nothing that really stood out to me about the Rogue reveal. Now, was there something I missed? I don't know if any of y'all saw anything either, but was there anything that I missed that just really maybe took somebody off guard that I didn't catch? Besides, I don't know, maybe was it the alchemy abilities? Or how do you say that? Is it alchem? Can you help me out, Day? I don't know if you can do it any better than I can.
Medical?
Alchemical.
Alchemical. I call them alchemical, but maybe I'm saying them wrong.
Flesh all's hearts.
Yeah, right? I mean, hey guys, I'm not here for spelling or grammar, so. But I did think it was pretty neat. I mean, they have the smoke and mirrors, which you've heard of before. Flash bomb, of course, sleeping powder. Was it pressurized flask? What's this unstable mixture? Throw a vial of hastily combined ingredients at your enemy, causing an unpredictable effect. I don't know. I think stuff like that's neat. I haven't seen any of that besides the smoke and mirrors. I haven't seen anything quite like that in the streams. So I'm not sure how all that's going to come together or work. But other than that, I really didn't see anything that stood out to me as crazy or mind-boggling or something that caught me completely off guard. It kind of seemed, I don't want to say standard, but it kind of seemed very straightforward to me when it comes to the Rogue. Again, I don't know if there's anything maybe that y'all saw that stood out to you.
I had like 4 things that kind of stuck out. Not really a concern, but more of a that's a cool idea, or I wonder how they're going to implement that.
What's that? I mean, like, what's one of them at least?
I like the length of rope ability. That's pretty cool. That's neat. That for me that was very interesting because they've already shown off there's going to be places in the world where you need to climb and stuff, and the rogues want to have ability to put down a rope to kind of help them out and stuff. That was interesting.
So length of rope, I'm going to go ahead and explain that for people that are listening to Pantheon Radio that may have not looked into it over the last week. So length of rope, let down a length of rope which your group members can climb. And we have seen climbing in the streams before, and that was something that I was really excited to see and can't wait to see more of. So, okay, I get that. I think we heard as well during the stream of Amber Fate that rogues would maybe potentially be able to help out with, certain things like climbing abilities, or helping their group in climbing, stuff like that. So, okay, I get it. I like it. Anything else?
Yeah, going back on their alchemy side of abilities, I wonder if that's just abilities that they can use, or if they're going to have to carry ingredients of some sort.
Okay. Well, they did have, what was this, Poison Craft? See here. That was something a little different than what I was, I read it and misinterpreted it at first.
Yeah, the way I interpret their poison craft is, I figure they're going to be able to like poison their weapons, which might, I reading that, I don't think that's something that they can do for other people, but because of that, they can create like different kinds of potions that can cure poisons and stuff. Maybe not all the poisons in the world, but a portion of them.
Okay. Well, and I'm trying to think, because that's a good question. I never thought about it, and I thought maybe with the poison crafting there might be something in there on that, but I didn't see anything reading through it again. Now, what you're saying is maybe for like smoke and mirrors, they throw a vat or a flask at somebody for some form of CC. So what you're thinking is, are they going to have to create these vials or flask or whatever that this particular powder is that they're creating? Are they going to have to create it, or is it something that's just an ability they utilize? Is that what you're saying?
Okay. Yeah, basically, is that an ability that they can use, or like are they going to have to carry different ingredients around in order to use those different abilities? It'd be interesting to see how that they implement that.
That's a very interesting thought. I never thought about that. I mean, regurgents in past games have been pricey and hard to come by in some cases. So if they had some sort of material that they need or would have to have as far as utilization goes for those abilities, yeah, that could be huge as far as what they're able to use and when they're able to use it. I never even considered that. I just thought it was going to be an ability. I mean, just like we've seen in the streams where I guess you could say they've started fighting a mob or something. We had one aggro and they use smoke and mirrors as just a form of a CC for a short amount of time to break that encounter up a little bit. But I never considered it having any sort of material that might go along with it. Let's see here. I'm playing, EQ on the side here just to kind of give people something to look at while we're talking through things on Twitch. And I'm thinking, maybe even like bone chips, for example. Now, it's not really hard to come by bone chips, but it's something that you have to consistently be aware of, even at higher levels. And you'll see people oftentimes come through lower level zones paying good money for stacks of bone chips because they don't want to sit there and farm those from decaying skeletons for hours. They would rather just pay some, low level person a few platinum to, take those bone chips and just run off and go do what they want to do. So for me, thinking it like that, if they do something like that or do use some utilization of materials or mats that they need for certain abilities, that does sound really interesting. I think that it might encourage some social gameplay as well. Especially if it's low-level materials that they're going to utilize. Something they would get off of a very, low-level mob. Like I said, bone chips, for example, are a great example for me at least.
It'd be interesting to see how they implement that. Something else that I saw that I liked is because I had this question floating in my head because I think it was Dungeons and Dragons Online when I played it. Like, if you had the backstab ability, like, it didn't matter what weapon you had, you could backstab with anything. So I remember people going like 19 levels of barbarian, 1 level of rogue, just to get the backstab with a two-handed axe. And I've always felt like backstabbing, to me, that's a dagger ability. And I noticed that that's what they implemented. Like, you have to have a dagger in your main hand in order to use backstab. And I was like, okay, that in my head, that made sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I that didn't catch me off guard. I don't even think. I mean, it was just one of those. It just makes sense to me. I don't know why you wouldn't have it that way, but you know, I guess that's just a matter of opinion. Let's see here. So, the pressure flask was interesting. Let's see, could be interesting if you can distract NPCs' attentions to let the group sneak by. So, pressurized flask. Let's see here. Throw a sealed flask of pressurized air at a target's location. The flask shatters on impact, creating a loud noise that draws the attention of nearby enemies for a short time. I mean, honestly, that sounds exactly what that's for. Reading through that.
Oh, that reminds me of the rogue ability in World of Warcraft, where you could throw it. I don't remember what it's called, but you could throw it. You could like turn the direction that they're looking, so you could sneak by them. Because if they were looking at you, chances are they would see you. So I see that relating to sneak.
Yeah, well, and I think as well when you're even in like Shadow Walk is the sneak form of a rogue. So even in a rogue's Shadow Walk while active, I would assume that if a target is or an NPC is looking directly towards you, they have a better chance of spotting you during that stealth or Shadow Walk. That makes sense to me. So, I mean, I see it as, yeah, it's probably something that is utilized mostly for that. But if there's any form of invisibility, like that you can provide to other members in your group, or any sort of Shadow Walk type ability that other casters can provide to other members of the group for a short amount of time, potentially a rogue could help out with that as well. I mean, they could even have to where not only one person, but multiple could get by for a short amount of time. Now, is that going to be a thing in the game? I don't think so. But I'm just saying, like, theory crafting here. Completely hypothetical. Yeah, that's neat, though. I mean, I like that. Just something that you would have to use, a distract of sorts, to turn the attention of an NPC so you could get by. Do I think that you'll be able to get by if you're not stealth? No, I think they'll still probably see you. I don't know how aggro radius is going to work, but I'm assuming that whether you're on the front side or back side of them, aggro is probably about the same as far as radius goes. So I don't think it'd be too much of a difference there, but maybe in that thought process, if a mob has a different aggro radius on when it's facing you versus when it's not, that could be something where even your group unstealthed, without the Shadow Walk capability, could utilize a pressurized flask from a rogue to then get by certain mobs or get around certain engagements that they don't want to take, just based off of their backs will be turned. I don't know. I think that's a neat idea.
The way it was done in WoW, it's one of those elements that I was like, wow, that's something I really, really liked that they gave the rogues there, that I'd like to see more games do. Like, you just throw this like little ball or something over there, it just turns them, just so you can sneak by them and stuff. I was like, yeah, that's something that a rogue should have.
So, with that, as far as the rogue goes, the rogue, like I said, is one of the more straightforward ones for me. I don't want to go too far into that one because I do want to spend a little more time on the ranger and monk. I guess one of the things that I would like to talk about is the monk first. And the first thing I'm going to say is I've probably mispronounced every word that's ever come out of my mouth when it comes to Pantheon lore. So can someone help me with how to say their combat resource? How do you pronounce this?
Chakra.
So you're going with chakra?
That's how I've heard it.
Okay, no, that's fine. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
How is it spelled?
It's spelled Chakra.
It's pronounced chakra.
Okay, so chakra. That's what I'm going to pronounce it as because I can't pronounce whatever you just did.
Close enough.
Yeah. So if somebody wants to correct me on grammar, feel free. I get it. It's not my strong suit. I'm trying my best here. Uh, so what I will say though is this was a really neat. I liked this combat resource. The other one being rogue for endurance. Now this one's different, and it appears that we're going to have a different one for potentially all the different classes. So we have momentum for ranger, we have chakra for monk, and then we have endurance for rogue that we see here. So I'm not sure how that's going to work for the rest of them, but definitely curious to see how this goes. Now, as far as interpretation of this goes, I know when reading through this, it appears like it's I guess you could say an endurance bar of sorts from that 0 to 100, but at the same time, they talk about 6 different gates. Now, my simplest interpretation of this was, I guess I look back at a WoW Rogue where they had combat points that they would build up during an engagement, and they would use abilities to build those combat points up, and then once they received a certain amount of combat points, they would then utilize those or use those to, use different abilities. So that's kind of my mentality when I think of these gates that they get to, and I'm not sure that I've heard it any other way that makes me think differently. Now, do I think that it's going to be just a point, like a bubble or something like that, like the Rogue and WoW had? Not quite. I mean, I think it will be a bar, but I think it will be like a segmented bar in 6 different segments that will have, the ability to where, let's say you're using something that uses the first gate. First gate, what was this gate being? The gate of anger, I believe it was. Yeah. So the gates are the gate of anger, the gate of peace, the gate of sorrow, the gate of joy, the gate of balance, and the gate of release. That's the 6 gates in order there. The gate of anger, let's say that's like it costs you like 15 of your chakra, or I guess you could say the bar represents 0 to 100, but we'll say that means that you have let's see, how do I put this in ways that make sense when I'm explaining it to verbally? If I have 100 chakra, then I have the gates dividing these as they go through that 1 to 100. Let's say every 15 is a gate, just for simplistic, I guess you could say, terms right now. So at 15, I unlock the gate of anger. This is the way I interpret it, at least. And once I unlock that gate of anger, then if I use an ability that utilizes gate of anger, it'll use 15 chakra. Not, if I unlocked 6 gates and then use the gate that used gate of anger, it would use all that. I think the way I read it is it would use that one gate, and then from there, what we would see is, you would have, let's say if you unlock 2 or 3 gates, so you're at like 45 chakra, you could use this one ability and it would use 15 of that 45, leaving you with 30 left. Potentially, you still have enough to utilize your second gate, which is the gate of peace as well, so for a different ability. So that's the way that I interpret it. Now, when reading through this, was there any other interpretation that you had on it, or any thoughts on it that were completely different? Does that make sense how I'm interpreting that?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when thinking through that, I mean, do you like that type of play style? I mean, is that a play style that you think would be appealing?
I think it fits the monk.
Okay.
I don't know if that was something that I'd like to do, but I played a couple classes from other games where it was something similar along the lines, and it wasn't bad.
Okay.
After a while, once you get access to all your abilities and stuff, you're going to have to find a nice balance between what abilities unlock at certain points, what abilities, help build up that energy pool, and trying to find a nice combination. But yeah, nothing really stood out to me.
So, with that, let me ask this question to you. So I've seen that we have I guess you could say, not a spam type. How do you put this? It's not spammy when I'm looking at the game. When I look at the gameplay, it doesn't seem like they're just sitting there just spamming abilities over and over and over again. So when thinking through it that way, and I'm thinking through the chakra and building that up as well, like using different abilities that really don't have a lot of resource intensity, like they're not really costing you much to use. You know, I think of, let's say, the WoW Rogue, for example, where you have the combat points and you build those up. You're sitting there spamming a button over and over and over and over and over again. It seems to me like this is going to be a little more, I guess you could say a little more intensive. Like you're going to have to, the building up those gates may take a little bit longer than what we saw in WoW, for example, where you're sitting there spamming a button and you could build those up repeatedly throughout a fight. Like I would say that in most encounters, you might build up, 6 gates. From what I've seen, it seems like maybe 1 time, maybe 2 times at most. But it doesn't seem like you would have it just flooding in. So with that in mind, does it change your opinion on it? I mean, does it change the way that the playstyle you think might occur when it comes to, people playing the monk? They're not going to be spamming the same ability just one after another. It seems like it might have somewhat of a cooldown, somewhat of a small little cooldown or something like that on it. Does that change anything for you, or does that seem still, oh, okay, that's no problem?
In my head, I figured monk would be that class that they very combo related is the way I'm going to put it, where you have to do certain things to build up your energy to be able to do other abilities, and it was all related to their combat. I think in a long fight, like a boss fight or something, it would probably play something along the lines of a Street Fighter game where you're doing a certain combination, building your energy up, doing certain abilities, just so you can get to that finishing attack that you want to do, and then just sitting there doing that combo over and over. I kind of feel like that's how it would play in my head.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. This is something that I was reading through, and it kind of caught me off guard. I'm not sure how this is going to work exactly, but the way that I read this and interpret it, it was interesting to me, so I wanted to see if you had a different interpretation. Iron Palm, for example, the ability to strike. It reads here at the bottom that it generates chakra, and it requires Gate of Anger to be open. However, it does not read that it utilizes or uses chakra at all. It just simply requires that the Gate of Anger is open, that you have enough built up already that this is open. So I've read this in a couple different abilities, like some of them they generate, and then some, like the Strike of the Wandering Wind, it uses chakra and requires Gate of Balance to be open. I'm assuming, again, that this, I'm trying to understand, and maybe you can help me with this, maybe you see it differently, but I see use and generate in different abilities, but some requiring gates to be open and some not. So for me, I guess the way that I'm kind of reading this is you might actually be able to use abilities that do not use any of your resource per se, but require you to have that resource already available to you. Which,
I feel like, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, which I kind of like the idea of. I mean, I think that idea is really neat, in my opinion.
I think when I read it, I think the gates are like thresholds in your energy pool, and you have to hit those thresholds in order to use related abilities. If you drop below that threshold, the gate closes. So you got to find a combination that builds up your energy that maintains certain gates to be open for you to use those abilities. That's the way I interpret it. So let's say in order to open the first gate, you need like 15 of your energy pool or your chakra or whatever it's called to be there, and you use an ability that costs it. Well, you use that ability, but you just close the gates. So now you got to get that energy built back up before you can do it again. So like I said, it feels like you're going to have to try to figure out for the monk class the right combination where you're building stuff up in order order to access certain abilities, and it's going to feel very combo feel to it.
I like that. Yeah, okay. I mean, I think that gives me a better understanding of how the class might play out. So that sounds neat to me. I'm excited to see how that comes together and how that feels when you're playing the game. I mean, we're only seeing a handful of abilities here, of course. It's not like we're seeing just all the abilities right in front of us. We're only seeing just a handful to give us a little taste of what they're going to offer and what's going to have available to them. But I do like the idea that you will have to think through what abilities you have, like on your bar. Your bar is going to be limited with limited abilities. You're going to have cooldowns on abilities. You're going to have chakra that's available to you or not available. Like some abilities generate it, some abilities use it. Some require certain gates to be open when when others don't. Like you're really going to have to, in my opinion, think about what abilities you have on your bar at any given time and what gates are required for those abilities. Because you may have an ability that uses chakra, but you may have your other 3 core abilities that require, the third gate to be available to you or open. And it may just be where if you use that one ability, you'll never have enough to utilize those other 3. So, when you want to, or at least, that to me makes a very interesting, thought-provoking type of class when you come to putting your abilities in play or putting them just on the bar in general, so that you can kind of work through them during an engagement, during an encounter. So I like that. So you're thinking combo. I mean, you're thinking like you're going to have to line up combinations. I do agree, but I think it might be even just a little bit more than that. It might not be even just so much a combination, but it might be one of those things where you can have different monks with different types of quote-unquote rotations, I guess you could say. I get combo could be used in the same sense as well, but I think of it more of like a rotation where, I'm using X ability to generate X amount of chakra, and then I'm going to, from there, use X, Y, and Z abilities to utilize that. And then once all those are done and on cooldown, I'll use X or Y ability to use all the chakra I've gained and built up, but then I'm going to have just enough left over to where I can utilize this one ability, generate just enough to open the next gate, and then start kind of over in the rotation. And you can change that rotation, you can change that combo, if you will, on multiple occasions or for different encounters. You can have variations in that, and you're going to have very different variations in that for different abilities that you use. So based off of certain abilities, you may not be able to utilize other abilities or skill sets because it just may not line up properly. I mean, it may be completely inefficient to utilize those set abilities with other abilities. So I do think that adds a little bit of a flavor to the class and to their ability sets, and what they're going to be able to do and when they're going to be able to do it, in fact. So I like that. I do. I like that a lot. All right, anything else on the monk? I know, the rogue, the monk, again, we've seen a lot of them. It seems pretty straightforward to me as far as they go. Besides, there was a few things in there like we talked about that were a little different, but for the most part, like the play style of them, as far as being, the monk or the monk being geared towards that melee DPS, off tanking utility type role, and then that rogue looking at more or less just that straight DPS or utility, straight DPS with some utility. I mean, I think I've had that in my mind for those two classes forever now. Not really anything that surprised me, but was there anything else that stood out to you about the monk, for example, that you would like to bring up before we move on to what I find is one of the more interesting classes that I've seen or heard about so far, the ranger?
No, the monk pretty much seems like it's what I pictured in my head. I guess rotation is the correct term to use, where you gotta figure out what abilities you want to set up for your rotation and stuff. Now, some of the abilities that they showed, like, I don't know, in my head, I'm thinking, why wouldn't you have that on your hot bar? So it just depends on the combination and your rotation setup.
Well, and as Liquid put here, he said it sounds like a priority system over a rotation system. I mean, we can get nitpicky with it. I think either way is perfect when it comes to explaining it. So, sorry, Dad, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to point that out.
No, that's all good. Some of those abilities seem to be very strong to me, and it's like, why wouldn't you have that on your hotbar? And once you get access to like the vast majority of your skills and stuff, sitting down and figuring out, a rotation of your skills and having those as, the things that you want to hit when you're doing that rotation, because they're so strong.
Okay. So, and again, we haven't seen all of them. I mean, that was just a small picture of what's actually available to us potentially. Okay, so on that note, is there anything on the Ranger you want to start out with? Because first and foremost, I'm just going to read this part. The group role of a Ranger is melee and range DPS plus utility. So I know that I've read the forums. I know pretty much everybody's read the forums on the Ranger. Man, it has been a heated discussion about what a Ranger should be or shouldn't be. So, again, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts and anybody else's thoughts as well on this, but I do have a lot of things that I noticed with the Ranger that I thought were really neat. So again, we'll start there. So melee and range DPS, I consider them, it sounds to me like, to be able to do both, but it also seemed like they would be able to really utilize melee skills very heavily. So I found that interesting. I mean, I did. I think we had the EQ Ranger, which is very different from the WoW Hunter, and we had a lot of comparisons going back and forth between the two. So definitely curious to see your thoughts and other people's thoughts as well. So with that, melee and range DPS, any concerns about that, or does that seem fair to you?
Personally, I had hoped that they took a page from the Hunter from World of Warcraft, and Rangers would be able to, go out there and tame a animal, and that would be a pet, and then you'd have certain pet animal abilities that you can utilize and stuff. But after hearing what they said in their recent stream and reading what they put out, I think this one works out a little bit better. It's definitely an interesting class.
Now, did they mention about the tame piece? What did they mention about that? So I know that I've heard a lot of people say Kaylin's command sounded like a tame animal. So let me read that real quick just for people that are listening. You speak in a commanding voice to target animal, immediately ending combat and making the target animal friendly towards you for a limited time. So I know a lot of people, when they first read that, were telling me, oh, it sounds like they get to charm a pet. Did they mention that in any of the streams? I'm sorry, I haven't been able to listen to a lot of them. So maybe you were able to hear that? Yeah,
the one with Brad and Jopa, they talk about it, where a Ranger isn't really a pet class per se, like the Summoner. So their animal abilities they have is more along the lines of you summon an ally, or you call an ally to help you in combat to kind of like augment your ability, but they're really not a pet.
Perfect. Now, I know, and I hope that it's okay saying this, so I actually reached out to ask directly what this Kaylin's command meant, and in fact, the response I got back was it was not a charm, it was more of a CC for, said individual. And I don't know if they said this during the stream or not. I'll have to go back and double check, and I apologize. But I do know that for the response I got back, basically it made it sound like this was a short-term charm that would allow you to drop aggro from said, animal, and allow either you to, I guess, go past it or move on from it, or just, again, drop aggro for a short amount of time, whether it's a CC kind of technique or something of that nature. One of the highlights that was put in, I was going to say, one of the highlights that was put into that note, though, that was sent back to me was that doesn't mean it drops aggro or makes that animal friendly towards everyone, which I thought was really neat, concept-wise, just when I heard that.
Yeah, I didn't know that ability was a hot topic, because the way I read it, because I'm looking at it on my screen now, and the way I interpret it, it's more like a pacify ability. Like you would cast that before you pull a group. And if you're the one pulling, then that's one less mob that would come at you. But if someone else pulls it, that's not going to happen. They're all going to come. So I see that in the way it's read or worded, to me, it's a pacify ability that's only on animals and not really a charm or something. Like if you're already in combat, I don't really think you could use that, but maybe you could. I don't know.
Immediately ending combat and making animal target friendly towards you.
Yeah, I mean, it would end combat with you, but if your group is, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Because if you're in combat and you use that, you may no longer be aggressive to it, but your group's still fighting it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I can kind of see a ranger pulling an animal from a pack off to the side, and if it's far enough away, casting that, and if no one's near it, technically CC, but just depends on how things play out.
I absolutely agree with you. I don't think it's any form of CC, quote unquote. I believe that it is a form of soothe or a pacify ability. And I believe that it's something that, if a ranger does pull aggro from a said mob, they could use that in a moment's notice to, remove that aggro or something of that nature. So, yeah, I mean, I think that it has some versatility in it. I think that's really neat. But, yeah, it was a hot topic in a very small limited community that I saw. So I thought that was really neat, though, especially when the information first came out. A lot of people read that as this gives you the ability to make an animal friendly towards you, quote unquote, a tame or a charm. That was the first thought that a lot of people had. So I thought that was neat that, that interpretation came out. For me, I got it as, what then it came back being, which is kind of like a pacify or a soothe or some sort of like crowd control technique for when you're pulling, or even in an engagement when you're in the middle of a fight, potentially taking that aggro off you as a ranger and moving it onto somebody else like a tank. So, I found it interesting that it became a hot topic for a short amount of time, but I think it sounds really, really neat that the Rangers are able to pull together these different, like this Beacon Veil Striders or Veil Striders, or the Beacon, and I hope that I'm saying it's Veil, right? Veil Hawks, Veil Striders. Yeah, okay. Had to go double check. But again, I think that they're calling forth these animals to help them for a short amount of time in certain aspects. I think that's a really neat way of going about it. I'm kind of in the same boat with you. When I was first looking at the Ranger, I played a hunter in World of Warcraft for a very long time. I really enjoyed the range combat that a hunter provided, but at the same note, I like the way that this sounds. I like their, kind of versatility a little bit, and I like that, potentially they're going to be a substantial DPS class. Even if it comes down to, needing them to do some melee DPS while in a close quarters dungeon or something like that. I found like, it feels like to me a ranger has a very high skill cap, which I am excited about. I find that any class with a low ceiling for the skill cap, as far as like the different types of players that you have playing those said classes, I like the ones that have that high skill cap, that where you can really tell the difference between a very quality player and a player who's, average, we'll say. I like the thought of that. And it sounds like a ranger is going to be one of those classes. Now, with that, looking at some of the, I guess, things when they have on here as far as foraging goes, when they're able to coat their arrow with some sort of, effect, or able to create some sort of, what is this? Moon Rose Balm increases your natural health regeneration by X% for a wide duration. A food, drink, or some sort of balm, tonic, or weapon coating. What did you think about the forage ability? I mean, or these other abilities they mentioned as well, the tonics, the balms, the weapon coatings. Like, what was your thoughts on that? Because I really like the thought. I mean, I think that really adds some, I guess it adds some flavor to each one of the classes, and potentially as you're traveling the world, it really adds value in utilizing this ability to forage and survey the area for some of these ingredients. I'm curious if these ingredients or this ability is, I mean, it sounds like it's just Ranger only, you know?
Yeah, personally, I feel like Forge is one of those abilities that I would have really liked to have seen any class be able to do, but depending on race, depending on class, you would have different skill caps. I like what they did here, where a Ranger can actually use it a lot better, like almost like in the sense of what the Rogue does with his abilities, and can create different things to augment his abilities as well. I like that, but I think Forge is just a skill that, or it should be a skill that just any class can use, but depending on your race and depending on your class, you're going to have different skill caps. I would have liked to seen that, but I think as of right now, it plays harmony to what Rangers were in EQ, but then it builds upon it.
Okay,
Because the
that's
Forge in EverQuest was pretty much Druid, Elf, and Ranger only a skill. So they kind of took that away from what we've seen so far, and it's just a Ranger ability.
Now, okay, so with, I mean, and I kind of in the same boat. When I heard Forge, you know, when I read it, first thought was it sounds like it's very Ranger specific. I don't think I'll see anything else probably for another class. Maybe, I don't know. We'll have to see how that turns out. On that note, though, let's switch over to the ranged abilities. Like you said, I was looking forward to some of the ranged abilities of a Ranger. And they do mention some here. We have Silent Arrow, we have Warning Shot, Harpoon Shot, Weighted Bolt, Glass Arrow, and then an Aim to Kill ability for some of the ranged things. So when looking at that, I wanted to bring kind of, I guess, some awareness or just talk about a little bit some of the different abilities they have and hear some of your thoughts, because I have my own definitely liking range classes or ranged abilities a lot. But Aim to Kill, rapid fire 3 arrows at your enemy with a chance to fire up to 2 additional arrows based off your agility and dex. So as far as that goes, as far as that goes, when you're thinking through that, what stands out to you? I mean, for that particular ability, like I guess what I'm thinking is, like, if we have a higher level Ranger in the group, he could potentially have 5 shots versus 3. So I don't know. I'm curious to see how this works with their combat resource being momentum.
I see that as like a barrage or a volley. You guarantee 3 attacks on your target, but like the additional 2, maybe they have like, let's just say for this discussion, 10% chance to get those additional 2. But depending on your agility and your dex, that 10% could change. So you can have up to 5 attacks, but you're guaranteed 3. The other 2 is just RNG. And I feel like that's not bad.
Okay. I can see that. Okay. So, okay. Well, let's think about this, though. What do we have here? The 2 things that I wanted to point out for range. We have Withdrawal, which is you kick off an enemy. This is a melee ability, as by the way. So you kick off an enemy from point blank, and it basically volts you back 8 meters. And then you automatically start range attacking. Nice. And then you have the Weighted Bolt, which fires a heavy bolt at your enemy and then forces them to knock back, it knocks them 2 meters away from you. So it sounds to me, well, and also, by the way, we have the Harpoon Shot, which pulls the enemy 2 meters towards you. So it sounds to me like a Ranger has a lot of movement capability, a lot of ways to get in and out of a fight or to control the distance of a mob from them in any given engagement. Now, I personally like this a lot because I think it's really, really neat having a lot of mobility and being able to control the positioning of certain mobs. However, I got to ask this question. How many people are going to fall off Amber Fate's cliffs with Withdrawal, kicking back a point blank shot and vaulting backwards 8 meters. I mean, how many people are going to fall off to their death? It's gotta be like one of the, it's going to be, in my opinion, I'm going to have like a cliff wall of just ranger bodies laying there where they've used withdrawal in the wrong time. Like, that's just my thought when I think about, that ability. And I just thought it was funny, like, thinking through these different abilities and they're, back and forth. Like, it sounds to me like they might be able to get in to combat, like into melee range, then get out of it and utilize ranged abilities very quickly, which I do. I love that thought. But I just wanted to hear what your thought was on being able to move and position a target with certain abilities, like the weighted arrow, the harpoon shot, or the withdrawal ability.
The one ability that stands out the most to me is the harpoon shot, because I can see someone creating a macro. So every time you use that ability, you just put in all caps, "Get over here" from Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, no, okay. I get you. So I just wanted to bring those up because when I read them at first, hold on one second. When I read them at first, let's see. I wanted to say something real quick. So when I read them at first, the first thing I thought was, it sounds like to me, for example, the withdrawal, you kick back 8 meters. So that's a pretty good distance in a game. So I like that. The weighted giving you only 2 meters, the harpoon giving you only 2 meters towards or away from you. Not huge. I mean, it's not going to be like they're pulling you across the map type thing, but it is going to position you a little bit better or worse. So for example, if I use withdraw and I want to get a little bit closer to my target, potentially I can use this harpoon shot, pull them a little bit closer to me. I see this good and bad. Because I'm going to be pulling them potentially out of like the range of my tank, or where he wants them to have them positioned or something like that. So I probably wouldn't use it a lot. But I was looking and I don't see an ability that really like gets you right back into the fight. Let's say if you wanted to use some melee focus abilities because you want to use like your Thunderpaw or your Panthus, like you want to use these abilities that you're beckoning these animals in melee range. It appears you might have to be within melee range to do this. So let's say you're doing this and these, beckons are helping you for engagements. I see the withdrawal helping me get at range, but I don't see anything besides harpoon shot really helping me get back to the engagement. So if I'm 8 meters away from the engagement, I'm going to have to just run to the engagement. I don't know if these arrows are going to continue to fire while running. I'm assuming so, at least auto shot. I'm assuming that I'll maybe be able to utilize ranged abilities while on the move. So maybe I can just get into the different, or I can get into the combat without having to worry about suffering DPS loss or something like that. But I'm curious if there's going to be another ability that comes down the line that allows me to get right back in, do kind of like a reverse withdrawal where I can just kind of jump right back into the combat or get in there even quicker than with just a harpoon shot and running.
Yeah, I kind of hope they do have some kind of ability that lets you jump from range back into melee combat. I figured maybe it wasn't listed here because maybe they're still working on it, trying to figure out exactly how they want to do that and whatnot. But if they just leave it with harpoon shot, that's going to annoy a lot of people, especially if you got your target set where the tank wants them, and then you jump back, fire, and then you harpoon them, and the whole group's got to remove them, the tank's got to reposition them. I can see that causing a lot of issues for people. So hopefully they're working on that.
Yeah, definitely. So very excited to see what other abilities they have come down the pipe there for the ranged abilities. Now, as we're getting close to the end of the podcast, I did want to mention one thing, and this was the one ability which, I'll be honest with you, I'm really excited about this ability. This ability alone makes me want to see, or makes me hopeful for what I see for Rangers in the future. So, Silent Arrow. Carefully aimed shot that inflicts devastating damage to your enemy. And then says if your enemy is caught in a trap, the ability will critically hit. But the thing that I thought was really cool about this, let me just go ahead and make sure I read the other part there. So it inflicts bonus damage outdoors. It's only usable out of combat, so you can't use this ability in combat. This is the part that really got me, though. I liked all that. I thought that was really cool. It's kind of like a focused, shot that you're using. You can't break concentration. It does more damage if they're in a trap, outdoors. I like this. This all sounds good. But this part right here is what really, really made me excited about this. Manually aimed, if in third-person view, activating this ability will move the camera into an over-the-shoulder perspective. First-person view will not be affected. So this is the first ability that I've heard of or seen that has been manually aimed. Like, not just an AoE ability, but a focused pinpoint manually aimed shot or ability. I'm not sure about you, but for me, I really, really like this. I love the idea of using this. I think it's going to add a lot of flavor and really cool potential outcomes for, rangers being pullers. Because I know that monks can be great at pulling with Feign Death. But man, if you could, this is the combination that I thought of. And this is why I wanted to bring up that ability, Kalen's command. Because again, I think of Silent Arrow. I think of going out into the outdoors. I'm pulling for my group. I have a trap set up, and I can't. So here's what confuses me. If your enemy is currently caught in a trap, this ability would critical hit. Well, I would think if the animal's caught in a trap, you're then currently in combat. But the arrow is only usable out of combat, so I'm not sure how that's going to work. But regardless, I'll figure that out later, I guess. The one thing I can figure out, though, is I'm outdoors. It's going to inflict more damage. So let's say that I use Silent Arrow. I'm outdoors. I'm pulling these giant grizzlies or whatever. I'm pulling these grizzlies. And as a ranger, I'm able to pull them with Silent Arrow, do a massive amount of damage to them, bring them over to the group, and then use something like Kalen's command to completely drop all my aggro towards me so that my tank can start building up aggro. And again, I know this Kalen's command is only for a short amount of time, like a friendly towards you for a limited amount of time. But again, that might be just enough time to where my tank's either able to pick up aggro off of me, or I'm able to, not take so much damage that I'm going to die immediately. So again, I really like the combination that you could go into with this, where you could start out with a Silent Arrow, pull that animal to you, and then drop that aggro all by yourself with your own abilities, so that then your group can help pick that up and really make that, really neat, I guess you could say, way of pulling in certain areas. Maybe they become the primary puller in certain raids or dungeons or something, or encounters, because of those types of abilities. I like that. I don't know about you, but that was really neat to me, hearing that manually aimed perspective.
I like what it reads, but I have concerns with it because I see it as a pull ability. But then I read the part where it says your enemy is currently caught in a trap. This ability will critically hit. Well, if you're the only ranger in a group, how are you going to place the trap in order to use this ability? Because you would have to get close enough to place the trap. You would have to wait for the trap to be triggered, at which point you would be in combat, which you can no longer use this ability. So it's like, that conflicts in my head. It's like, how? Now, if you had multiple rangers in the group, I could see that being a different story. You have one go over there, trap the pull. You place a trap, trigger it, it pulls. Maybe that one mob stays behind. Then you have your other rangers, they just bombard on that guy with this ability. I could see that. But if you're the only ranger in the group, I don't see how you're going to be able to get an enemy trapped in a trap while not getting in combat. Because the act of trapping them would trigger combat.
Well, okay. And thinking through this, though, you could always use, like I said, Kalen's command, read it, immediately ending combat, making animal target friendly towards you for a limited time. If this immediately ends combat, if I'm able to place a trap, put an animal into a trap, use Kalen's command to end the combat while the animal remains in the trap, use Silent Shot to then manually aim a devastating shot towards this animal, I mean, this combination of events could lead into very interesting way of playing. So
yeah, on an animal, I can see it.
Yeah, I mean,
especially with that ability. But given any situation when you're not an enemy, it says that this ability is only usable out of combat. So if you manage to somehow get close enough to put a trap, or maybe you place a trap along between you and the guy, and you pull them, no matter the scenario, you're still going to be in combat. So this ability can't be used unless they have it set up where you could quickly use it before you enter combat. But again, in my head, thinking from my experience, I just don't see how a single ranger can trap and use this ability before getting in combat.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely something to look forward to seeing. I'm very curious to see how this all works together, but I was very excited to hear about things like Silent Arrow. I was very excited to see about Forage, other things like the the Stride, Velguard Stride, I believe it was. It was the passive. It's a passive effect, increases movement speed. Yeah, so Velguard Stride increases movement speed after being outside for a short amount of time. I thought this was really neat. It encourages me to, or I get encouraged by this because I'm looking forward to seeing what other passive abilities we're going to have within the game itself. I think there's a lot of opportunity for some really cool passive abilities, so I'm excited to see more on that. Now, again, with that being said, how this will all come together and work, we'll have to see when the game comes out. Rangers may just be completely, crazily, I don't want to say overpowered, but powerful when it comes to outdoor scenarios. And that's what it sounds like to me, which is really cool. But then again, when you come to the indoor dungeon cave type environment, they may be not slightly worse, but they may be utilizing different abilities or skill sets because they have to. Which, again, I like that because of the environment, because of the situation, because of the encounter, because of the mob type. You're having to think through how you're playing this game and what you're going to be doing. We talked about it a little with the monk, with the different gates that they have. We see here with the rangers and the outdoor versus indoor type of environment or situation. And then again with the different classes that come out, I'm excited to see more around this as it comes. Now, with that, I'm going to go ahead and say, so Day, I'll take, we'll take the conversation kind of offline here and continue for the Twitch chat. But I want to thank everybody on Pantheon Radio for hanging out with us tonight and dropping by. I can't thank you all enough for the support that you have shown. And just, I look forward to continuing doing these types of shows more and more as we continue to get, closer, hopefully, to that day of release. As more information becomes available, we'll continue to talk about it and bring it up. And as people bring questions to us, we'll continue to share our opinions on those as well. Most of the show is more or less off theory crafting, but I do like to bring a lot of fact and talk about a lot of the things that we actually know are going to be within the game. Again, reveals on classes and other things as well. So thank you all for hanging out with us. Can't, say enough about it. I do want to give a quick shout out to Pantheon Radio. As far as I know, the treasure hunt is still going on, guys. So if you haven't already, be sure to check out pantheonradio.com and look up the treasure hunt. In the top right hand corner there, you're going to see a treasure or little treasure box. Click on that, looking for 8 words that combine into a sentence. That sentence will then earn you $300 on Amazon. So be sure to check that out. Really, really cool opportunity, really neat thing that they're doing there for the community. And I'm excited to see more competitions like that as they go through. But they're going to continue this competition until they receive a winner. So I know that I've talked to a few people. They've had up to 3 words, but they're still waiting to get more. So it's still out there, guys. There's still an opportunity out there for you to earn $300 for your for an Amazon gift card just by listening to Pantheon Radio and checking that out. For now, guys, that's it. I appreciate everybody. Thanks so much for Pantheon Radio and all they're doing. Thanks so much for hanging out with us on Pantheon Radio. And we will see y'all all next time, which will be Friday at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I think we got a pretty exciting show coming up, so look forward to that. But until then, guys, y'all have a good night, and we'll see you then. Bye.